Hello and welcome everyone to today's Fairygodboss live webinar. We are so excited to have you all join us on this Monday afternoon, and we are going to give folks a few seconds to connect. So while we're waiting, we would love to know where everyone's tuning in from. So you'll see on the right side of your screen, there's a chat box. So if you feel comfortable doing so, please send a quick message in the chat saying, hey, and let us know where you're joining in from. And let's see. All right, so we already have folks chiming in. A couple folks from New York, like myself, all right? Texas is in the house, Charlotte, North Carolina, Michigan. Chicago, it's sunny and hot there. That's good to hear, Lisa. All right. Let's see. More folks are chiming in. I love this. We're all over the place. I love it. Colorado. So I do see that we have folks coming in from all over, and that is great. So let's go on ahead and get started. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Lasheen Williams, Enterprise Brand Strategist here at Fairygodboss. And I have a couple of quick announcements for the audience. Now, this session will be recorded and shared via email with all the registrants. During the discussion, we would love to hear from you all. So please, if you use the stage chat on the right side of your screen to send messages, comments, and questions to the panelists and to one another, we can keep this interactive and fun for everybody involved. Phoenix, Rhode Island. All right. So enough about me. Let's kick off today's event, Empowering Upskilling and Lifelong Learning, sponsored by Siemens Digital Industries Software. Now, for those who don't know, Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Millions of women visit Fairygodboss for career connections, jobs, community advice, hard to find intel about how companies treat women, and virtual events just like this one. And I am thrilled, so excited to be joined by three leaders from Siemens Empower's education and startup team: Dora Smith, Shannon O'Donnell, and Janelle Simmons. Now, would each of you please like to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves? We'd love to hear what's going on in your personal lives, in your private, professional lives, whatever you guys feel comfortable telling us, and what you do in your role today at Siemens Digital Industry Software. Dora, I'd love it if we could start with you.
All right, I didn't know we were going to touch on personal too. So let's see, today is Monday, but it's also the first day of high school for my youngest son. So that feels like something I should share with you as another milestone, hopefully achieved. But overall, my role at Siemens is I'm Senior Director of the Siemens Empowers Education and Startup Program. And so my role is to direct strategy. You'll hear more from Shannon and Janelle, but our strategic enablement and engagement, that's both internally within the software division of Siemens and then externally in the startup and academic market. We've got a large ecosystem. We support about 4,000 schools around the world and about 1.5 million students. But our mission is to just be here to empower learners to create a more innovative and sustainable future. So that's why we get up every day and are really excited to be here. Normally, I'm on the other side listening to these great webinars by Fairygodboss. So glad to be here with you today.
Amazing. I love it. Thanks so much, Dora. Shannon, we would love to hear from you. If you could introduce yourself and your role on the Siemens team.
Thanks, Lasheen. As I get started, I just want to say thank you to Fairygodboss for having me and my amazing colleagues to be on this webcast. And I hope that this information really reaches those of you who are on here thinking about your own careers. I'm an education-forward interculturalist who really looks towards equitable opportunities in education. So I joined Siemens about 2.5 years ago with that mindset. So at Siemens, I leverage my skills as the global team leader in education engagement, looking at what we're doing across the globe to really empower learners and educators, as well as our own staff, which we'll talk about later.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Wow, this is a smart group, guys. We got to definitely have our thinking caps on for this one. I already feel it. Janelle, please, last but not least, we would love to hear from you.
Great. Well, it's great to be with you all today, and thank you so much. So I'm Janelle Siemens, and I am Shannon's colleague and counterpart. So I lead the Global Education Enablement team under our Global Academic Program, and working with Dora and Shannon and our startup head of our colleague head of startups to, again, support skills and education in the critical fields of engineering and tech. And as a newbie, I am about 2 months into my career with Siemens, coming previously from the academic side, actually, coming from the University of Michigan. Shout out, Go Blue, for those who are on. I know you are. And so for me, my passion and what I'm so excited about in what we're doing in the Global Academic Program is really connecting the academic world, whether that's universities or other institutions of higher education, and industry, and thinking about how we can make skills more available, accessible, and relevant to learners who are going to be going into the workforce or making a change in the workforce as well.
Incredible. Thank you so much. Thank you all. I'm so excited about our discussion today. I know that our audience is going to really get some tangible knowledge and information today from you three. And for those who are just tuning in, I would like to remind everyone that we will be answering questions that come directly from you. So please submit your questions in the chat on the right of your screen, and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can. Now, let's get started with some of my questions. First of all, and Shannon, I'd love it if you could kick us off with this one. Can you give us an overview of the team's mission and objectives in empowering lifelong learning?
For sure. If you think about it, we've got the chat open. If you want to put an answer into this, feel free. But if you think about lifelong learning, who does it typically begin with? It's our role models. And when we look at what role models are today and where they're coming from, it's really critical to start thinking younger. From an engineering perspective, approximately 75% of engineers or so grow up in families that have engineers. And as we look at this growing need for being able to expand who our workforce is, we know that we need to reach outside those boundaries of familial roles, right? And so as a company, we're recognizing this engagement need to reach younger and more inclusively across the globe. And so that's what we're focused on, is really looking at how are we doing this? If we're talking to a US audience, I'll say that K through PhD, as well as lifelong learning, to really be able to continue upskilling and meeting the needs to empower lifelong learning. That's really where we see it, Lasheen.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Shannon. Janelle, love to definitely get your thoughts on this as well.
Absolutely. So my team comes alongside Shannon's, as I mentioned before, and where we're engaging with Shannon's team, maybe engaging with students and faculty. We're coming at it from what we call inside Siemens an enablement perspective, and that's a lot about the content. So we want to make sure that that learners and faculty and professors and teachers can have access to Siemens software so that they can learn the skills that they need. But we also want to wrap around that software with relevant content, with industry-related experiences and information and examples that really help them sort of put that into a practical context. So we provide resources, we provide content, we support curriculum, and are now building pathways through credentials for learners to enable them to take their next steps.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then Dora, please, we would love to get your insights on this one.
Yeah, and I just want to echo some of the comments we're starting to see of really parents being the role models. And that's really so key, right? Is people got to see it to be it. They got to see someone like them to want to go down that path. And so, just to add to what Shannon and Janelle shared, we're really trying to look at 3 key trends in this space. One is that talent shortage. We don't have, enough skilled in the right areas to meet both the needs for our own talent pipeline, our customers, our partners. I mentioned that large ecosystem we're trying to support. The second trend is really looking around sustainability. And this one is, something we certainly see future engineers need to have, obviously, a sustainable mindset and a digital skill set. But what I love about this topic and trend is when we reach out particularly to young women, young girls, to get them to think about going into engineering, this really seems to resonate. They care about making an impact and a difference in something that's going to impact their world, our planet. And so it's really the thing we can use to inspire many more to consider this field. And then the third trend, Janelle mentioned a lot of things we're trying to get out there accessible. It's really about digital access and delivery, right? Education is going through a digital transformation like every other industry, and we need to be able to address that access or integration to really meet learners wherever they are and give them the ability to customize, their own journey and pull from us when they need things. So those are kind of the three areas I just sort of wrapped around what you heard from Shannon and Janelle.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, Dora. I wanted to keep it on you for just a little bit. I'd love for you to start off with the answer for my next question. Now, lifelong learning is a crucial aspect in today's fast-paced world. How does Siemens digital industry software, approach lifelong learning and staying ahead of technology advancements and industry trends?
Yeah, so I'll kind of come back to that access thing I was just touching on, Lasheen, because when we look at students at each education level and what do we need to do to help them stay abreast and ideally ahead of technological advancements. And so for us, really focusing on open learning so we can democratize the access to that content and those credential opportunities. So for example, one of the things we've really been focused on the last couple of years is in collaboration with massive open online course platforms like Coursera and some of our key academic partners. We've launched some courses to address this. One I'll mention two actually. One is the future of mobility. And so this is where we really look about teaching advancements in electrification and automation. And then another one is digital transformation, where we looked at how you can use technology as a competitive advantage. And so really looking at AI and computing and connectivity and how do we apply those with the digital tools so we can really transform businesses. So that's one of our key approaches now and going forward.
Love it. Janelle, I would love to get your thoughts on this one as well. Anything you can add to Dora's comments?
Yeah, I'm just going to jump back to Dora's earlier comment about sustainability and sort of the passion that a lot of people have, and again, particularly that younger generation and women. And one of the things we're trying to do to really lean into that, Siemens as a whole is very focused on sustainability. And so we've been working to develop a Skills for Sustainability network, which is a community of faculty and industry leaders coming together to support the integration of sustainability information and resources into engineering education, and to really wrap that into the content, the information, the kinds of examples. So we are also actually supporting the Engineering Professors Council and the Royal Academy of Engineers in they're currently developing a sustainability toolkit, which should be out in about the next 6 months, and just really practical applications of how we can help really work engineering around this theme. And again, make it more accessible, more interesting, really resonate with that generation that we're trying to empower and hopefully entice into moving into this field.
I love that. Wow. Just incredible. I love to see that things are actually moving along, coming in a really good time, like 6 months. That's really, really exciting. Hey, Shannon, I wanted to hear from you a little bit. What specific strategies do you use to enable your team to enhance their skill sets?
One of the things that's been really exciting about coming to Siemens has been how our leadership team and our leader Dora here, as well as the executives who support us in finding appropriate learning opportunities constantly, whether it's podcasts or books, trainings, we're always encouraged to keep learning, going back to school even, and being able to look at that. But I think that also speaks to a lot of what we're looking for from the employees that join Siemens, which is what is the mindset, making sure that people have that lifelong learning mindset and completing required digital learning hours every year, that every employee is required to complete a certain number of that, as well as different team building activities. So there's really a true focus on where your strength is, but also thinking about how can you supplement and bring yourself up. And that type of mindset comes into the way that we're approaching what we're doing on the academic program.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Love that. Okay, cool stuff. Janelle, any insights that you could offer as well?
Sure. I'll take a little bit of a personal approach in terms of my team specifically, thinking about the fact that it's both global. My team spans, I think, 4 time zones at the moment. I know Shannon's is even more, and also fully remote. Thinking about how I can support my team members. I personally tend to take a little bit of a coaching approach, so helping them to, really make sure that we're staying connected, the open lines of communication so that I know how I can best support them, but also working with them, whether that is thinking about their next steps. And as Shannon mentioned, what kinds of professional development that we can help them either supply for them or connect them to be able to think about their next step in their career journey, or whether that be talking through how best to approach an issue, or creative, problem solving. What is a great solution, and how do they work through that process in their own context of their daily work. In the same way that we are trying to empower future learners, for the future workforce, we want to empower our own employees in that same way.
Got it. I got it. Thank you so much. Dora, coming back over to you for a second here. How do you measure the success and impact of your upskilling and lifelong learning initiatives?
That's a great question. And, I'm really pleased to be on this meeting with Janelle and Shannon, because, we can look at numbers and we certainly measure our digital learning hours, as Shannon mentioned. But having these two here with me, wasn't the case a couple of years ago. And so how I measure success is if we are bringing others along with us, right? And what we are helping each other learn and teach each other. I love seeing in the comments so many people reaching out to one another and networking and sharing their LinkedIn, right? It's all about those connections. I guess a couple other things I'd share with you, though, is really looking at both, what's going on with an individual and then what's going on with the team. And if that helps us identify, let's say, gaps or opportunities for that upskilling. So we've got a real focus in Siemens on growth talks. And what do we really look at that impacts, what you're doing, the results you're trying to achieve, but also how you do your work. Because it is just as important, that you have good behaviors and interact well. One of the things I like is we do them, sometimes people say too frequently, but we have very frequent employee surveys, and they are a pulse check. So for me, it lets me know what's on the team's mind that sometimes maybe they're not comfortable sharing in a one-on-one conversation or our team meetings. One that came up over this last year was someone had written in the comments, I didn't know who, but that there didn't seem to be transparency on career paths. And so it really gave us the opportunity to say, hey, this is a need someone didn't necessarily want to raise their hand up and say, but let's bring in HR and let's look at what are some of the career mapping we've done where you can go, in our team, in our organization, and other parts of the organization. And had we not had that survey, I never would have had that kind of feedback. So it sounds very qualitative, but to me, having those stories meeting the needs of what is on the minds of employees and having some pretty phenomenal women now that we're growing as well, that's how I measure success.
Fantastic. That is just so great. And I hope any leaders that are, watching this as part of the audience are taking those notes, because it's so important, right? To address, your folks and what they need and what their feelings are. So I love that you're taking these suggestions, you're taking these extra steps to make every voice heard. That is incredible. Thank you for that. Shannon, I would love to get your insights on this one as well, please.
For sure. Thank you. Tagging on to what Dora was saying, I think mentoring is something else that's been really interesting to see when we bring in our university interns and to see them staying on board and then getting hired by Siemens. That's something that we take a lot of pride in, and watching how they're really we're not measuring it from oh, did they come and stay with us? Maybe HR is, but that's not what our team is looking at 100%. We're really trying to find where these different behaviors are that Dora was talking about and upskilling capabilities. The other part of it too, from a measurement perspective, is really being able to see how can we help elevate some of these messages. So maybe we had an amazing intern for 2 years, but they wanted to work at an aerospace company to get their skills up a little bit in a different area, and then maybe come back to Siemens, right? So how is it that we're able to foster that? So we look to digital badges as one of those ways that, with the new era of being able to post our badges, be able to learn from other experts, take the LinkedIn courses, take the courses that your companies offer, take the courses that Siemens offers, digital badges serve as one of those ways that we can help people seek out and be able to showcase their potential upskilling and hiring talent. And then beyond that, through social media, being able to see that even more. The just-in-time learning to be able to address immediacy is really critical. And I think that's one of the ways we can continue to measure, in addition to looking at how long are our employees staying with us and how do they learn from university all through into their professional world.
So cool. So cool. Love it.
Hey, Lasheen, if I can just add in, on the digital badge topic, for anyone who's trying to understand that or that's new to visualize it, look at Lasheen's background, right? And see all these accomplishments he had with real live badges. And we're just trying to take that into the digital space and give people recognition for certain knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Love it. I love that. Thank you. So you know what I want to do? Is I want to get the audience involved a little bit. So I would love to start answering a couple of questions. Let's see. Okay, I have one. Ooh. So the way that we do this, guys, I'm going to ask the question, and then whoever unmutes first gets to answer it first. It's kind of like Family Feud. So just be ready. So how do you ensure or encourage maybe people are using or applying their learnings, especially for new technologies, if they are not directly using the technologies currently in their role? It's great to expose people to current tech trends, but it is hard to retain if not applied.
I'm going to take this one a little bit. So my background was working in education with faculty members that were onboarding and taking in different technologies. And the number one thing was stop trying to eat the shark, right? Like, you just need to take a little piece of what it is that you're trying to do and be able to start incorporating it that way. And sometimes you have to grow more rapidly, but to start with a small bite and then continue to look down that path. So I hope that's helpful from that perspective.
I love it. Does anybody else want to chime in? This is definitely a free-for-all.
I would just encourage people that I'm one of the older ones in the crew here, but early on in my career, there was kind of this new technology coming around, and I saw that on the horizon. It was really going to change the way we were doing our work, at least in the area I was. But nobody in the company was asking me to go study up on that, right? But I did it on my own because I thought I needed to learn that. And then the time came when suddenly they needed somebody, that had some knowledge, some expertise. So I'd encourage you, even though you may be learning about something and not have the ability to directly apply it right then in your role, seek out those opportunities. Sometimes I often say go outside to do better inside. Like, you can find opportunities to apply that knowledge and skills, perhaps in a volunteer role at another organization, right? And really strengthen that. So don't let your current role limit you from going and trying and apply that. And I think you'll be surprised that you might get a tap on the shoulder then, because people will find out you have some expertise there. So just some advice.
That is great advice, and something I've personally experienced as well. Just learning something and then having it in my back pocket, and then one day I needed it, they needed it, and I knew it, and kind of made me the hero. So yeah, that's great advice, folks. Coming from, I'm telling you, it's great advice. Janelle, did you want to chime in at all before I move on?
I think they've covered it.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so we have another audience question. Again, same rules. Whoever unmutes first. Let's see. Okay. Could you share advice for individual contributors seeking support for advanced learning in cases where such opportunities aren't readily available within their current roles or management is resistant?
So I can start off on this one and would love my colleagues to chime in. I think for me, one of the key things is to do your research. If you're interested in something and it's not available where you are, who else is offering it out there? What does that look like? Is it a course? Is it a webinar? Is it a degree program? Why that program? What makes you interested in that particular thing? And then really start to build a case, right? How could you're gaining that knowledge really benefit the organization that you're with? It might not even be a direct, one-for-one in your current role, but if you see that advancing your skills and your perspective, how can you think about applying that to a way that would add value to the organization? And I think that's making that case and building that sort of rationale is a really great step to helping to convince.
All right, I want to add to that if I can jump in.
Please.
And maybe it's because it's on my mind because I mentioned at the beginning of the call I have a son entering his first day of the last year of high school. But particularly with my kids, I say this all the time, right? You have to be your own advocate, right? Mm-hmm. And so just always trying to be an advocate for what you need, but put it in the context that a manager or a leader needs to make a decision. Like what's the cost? What's the impact? What's the effort needed here? And make it an easy decision for any of us to say, yeah, you should go take that additional opportunity. So yeah, don't wait for the opportunities to come for you. Always advocate for yourself and what you need. And that way you'll be, front and center in those managers and leaders' minds to be thinking about. So thanks.
100%. I tell my son the same thing. Absolutely. Shannon, did you want to chime in before we move on?
I think those were great. We're good.
There you go. All right. Okay. So I have a question myself. Now, innovation often requires risk-taking and experimentation. Now, how does Siemens encourage employees and learners to embrace failure as a part of the learning process and use it as a stepping stone towards success?
So I'm going to take this one and start with making sure that's that full statement. Embrace failure as a part of the learning process, not just embrace failure, but learning process on this, right? So when I first started at Siemens, I was really surprised because they do awards and there was an award for failure. And I just was so surprised by that opportunity to be able to look at what's a big project that someone tried to move forward and that something happened and they decided that they needed to pull back. And that to me showed how it's a company that's willing to adapt that. Also in our daily work, we have the red, yellow, green on dashboard stoplights, right, for different projects. And the first time we submitted it to one of our executives, everything was green. And she came back and said that shouldn't be the case, right? You should have some yellows and reds on here also so that you really have that opportunity to say, hey, this isn't working. In previous roles, if anything came back yellow or red in my world, that might have meant that you were not going to be secure in a position if there's a reorg or something along those lines. So from a cultural perspective, I just thought that was incredible. And then being able to take that and do similar things with the interns and co-ops that we work with and enabling them. Sometimes it takes them, 20 hours to do something that a professional might take 5, but giving them that time to be able to learn as they're going through it. It's not a matter of practicing 20 hours. It's a matter of perfect practice when you're doing something, right? You know that. Look at all the awards. So when you want to get there, you definitely have to keep doing that. And so, yeah, failure is a good way to learn, but how do you also keep practicing perfect?
Love it. That is so insightful and just different. Like failure rewards. I have to take my glasses off for a second. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Wow, that's so interesting. Very fascinating. Dora, I would love to get your thoughts as well, please.
Yeah, one of the things that's on my mind with that question is a little bit of the history of our company. So we're now part of Siemens, but most of us came to Siemens as a part of an acquisition or a merger. So Siemens went down this road of getting very serious about being in the software business. And so there's this software, I would say the software DNA at Siemens is very kind of startup entrepreneur, because that's how we grew up. And in fact, what we love about it being in the education space is much of the software was developed in academic settings at different universities around the world, and then eventually grew into companies that then got acquired by Siemens. And so there's something in that I think we have that entrepreneur mentality, which allows you to fail, but fail fast and learn. And so then I think over time, one of the other things we did over the last year was really merge our startup strategy in with our team. And so it really is improving, I think, strengthening the muscle for us to think like startups and entrepreneurs, because we need to serve their needs. And I hope maybe Janelle and Shannon can tell me if I'm wrong, but in our team, really trying to cultivate that attitude that I would rather you have tried and failed than not take that risk and innovate. That is so important. And I'd rather look to people and even promote them into roles who failed and learned, right, than those that never even tried to take the risk. So hopefully we're cultivating that kind of attitude.
Fantastic. Absolutely. I am a product of startups, and I completely agree. The way that it just kind of helps get you that thick skin and that mindset, that mentality. It is a very, very useful way to develop your own skills and your own frame of mind, so to speak. Dora, keeping it on you for a little bit, I also wanted to know, how does Siemens support employees who may be transitioning to entirely new roles or industries through their upskilling initiatives?
So that's a really good question, and I hope I'm a good poster child for this, because this role I've been in the longest, I think, than I've been in any other one through my career here. So I'm going on just finishing up about 8 years. But before that, every 5 years, I was moving into a new role, new organization, a new opportunity. Some of which I was skilled for, and others were things I needed to upskill for. And so there's a couple things. One is there's a strong network of support of people, but there's also this really robust, especially now with digital learning. So we have in Siemens a thing called My Learning World, and they pipe in some expert content from all kinds of sources externally. Plus, there's all kinds of Siemens internal experts. But what's cool about it is it can be overwhelming, right? There's so much content. Where do you start? What's the path? And so they have, I think now, about 800 curators. So these are people throughout the company that are somewhat as a subject matter expert on that topic, and they curate the best of the best to give you focused content to learn on, and then pathways. So you can go from here and move on up. And so that spans things like, let's say, artificial intelligence or cloud, cybersecurity, even sustainability. Some of the one of the projects Janelle and her team are working on is some sustainability course content that we're going to serve externally, but it's also going to be there for every single employee in Siemens to take as well. The other piece I would mention, because actually the three of us were just together today as we were looking at kind of our annual feedback to our teams and what they need, as there's a lot of rich learning programs that we nominate people for and spend some extra funds. So we really try to look at where's that person now, where do they need to go, and what are some of these other let's say more instructor-led training opportunities that we can bring them into, or do they need a mentor, and do they need more of a formal mentor program with a higher level executive? So those are some of the ways that I've both personally experienced and we certainly are trying to promote across our team.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Shannon, we would love to hear from you on this one.
I think Dora covered everything really well on that. The other part of it that I'll add to is when you're working with employees and looking at the full ecosystem is just so critical. And having a company that enables people to help each other is really important. And I say that because you've got teams that are billed hourly, and being able to take anybody's time can sometimes result in a little bit of a lower productivity when it comes to the year end, right? So being able to find that ecosystem that's helpful and supportive, transitioning from a company with a very different background into Siemens and learning the jargon. Even just something as simple as that is not as simple when it's thousands of different acronyms, right? So we really look to each other to be able to help and guide and find those documents in a massive database of documents that we love going into, but sometimes you just need that extra support. So really grateful for all the employees that have helped us along the way and being able to reach out across that ecosystem. Also with faculty, that's a really interesting area also. I'm on the board at my old university for the school I graduated from, and something as simple as reaching out and saying, hey, I need to learn a little bit more about this. Can you help me out? That's something that I was able to do because of my transition between industries and needed to do that to figure out some upskilling that might be a little more simplified than my colleagues. So being able to respect their time and learn a little bit outside. And then we talked about the badging and podcasts earlier, but Innovation in the Classroom is a podcast that we host, and that is hosted primarily for faculty members to be able to help them start transitioning into a mindset of more industry, as well as our industry people being able to hear more from educators to look for where those points of collaboration are. So just really, there's so much support out there, and it's a matter of learning how and when to use it appropriately and encouraging people to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. Phenomenal, just completely phenomenal. I love it. Thank you so much. Janelle, how can other companies and organizations collaborate with Siemens to further promote and support lifelong learning on a larger scale?
You're asking one of my favorite questions. So as Dora mentioned earlier, we collaborate with a very large number of universities and would love to continue to collaborate with more all across the world, as well as not just universities, but again, other institutions of education, whether that is community colleges or vocational and technical schools or high schools, all the way down into sort of middle schools and elementary, because the sort of sparks of engineering really start early. And so we love to collaborate with all of them, engaging with them, getting students interested in thinking about engineering and STEM generally. Shannon's team does a lot of work at all levels with engaging with students and competitions. My team works again with content and supporting the learning through curriculum and resources and how to really put sort of real world practical application to some of the theory that they're learning in their classes, supporting faculty and professors. But we also partner with learning institutions to create content. One of the questions earlier was sort of how do I stay on top of trends and thinking about how do we make sure that everyone globally has access to at least a basic understanding of some of the really key issues. Dora mentioned our massive open online courses through Coursera and with some of our university partners, everything from that sort of looking at the future of mobility through different lenses, not just science, but through socioeconomic and legal and other types of aspects, to digital transformation. What is it? Why should I care? How will it affect me? And how will it affect the company that I'm working for? So we try and do back and forth, right? We try and provide education and also create content with our partners.
I'm just going to go ahead and say I loved the last 2 minutes of you just going like that, like I saw some passion in that question. You really wanted to answer this one. I love it. I think everybody else caught that too. I know I got a couple goosebumps. Dora, I'd love for you to chime in as well.
Well, it's hard to follow that ad. So thank you, Janelle. I guess the only other thing I would add to that is really, we really look at the community aspect and where some of the connections we make for these partnerships come through that kind of collaboration. So for instance, Shannon and I have both been pretty involved with the American Society for Engineering Education. We've served on their corporate member council. And that's where we're trying to be not just the Siemens voice, but the collective voice of industry to engineering education leaders. And so I'd encourage, any companies that are here or other organizations join that, come in and be a voice there, and then we can collectively drive more change in education. There's another organization, a little more global, called, they have an annual event called the World Engineering Education Forum and Global Engineering Deans Council. So WEF GDC, if you need another acronym, because Shannon likes us always challenging each other on what the acronyms mean. But their event will be coming up in October in Monterrey, Mexico. And what's interesting is for the first time at this event, Tech de Monterrey is helping plan this. They're actually offering a micro-credential. So it's an active learning experience micro-credential. So here you can go get some actual learning and get a credential for that. And then you can network with companies like Siemens, leading engineering educators and students. There's a big student component as well. So I would recommend those types of organizations because that's usually where we get introduced and someone says, hey, someone over here is doing something interesting, and you might want to talk to somebody at Siemens, and then we get connected to go do great things together.
Fantastic. That is phenomenal. It does look like we have some more audience questions. So I wanted to jump back on over to that side of town and kick off with this one. Same rules, Family Feud. I have an employee who needs to upskill, but is very hesitant. How can I encourage her to do that when she's scared of new things?
I used that analogy of a shark earlier, and it's a weird analogy, and I recognize that. But the shark is, I think, how a lot of people feel about what learning is as you mature. You start to fall into what's very comfortable, and anything outside of that, especially in the last 3 years, might not feel as comfortable to reach out. And if I start to learn something new, what's the consequence of that? Does that mean I'll have to do different work? Does that mean I'll have to have a new manager? And that whole wheel of what's happening in your head starts to spin. So being able to take a step back, and maybe when you're encouraging her to do that, find out what she's passionate about and start with something that might not be so far out of a wheelhouse, but something that's very comfortable and near and dear that she could expand on and maybe become more of an expert on. Might be a way of doing that.
Love it. Anyone else want to chime in?
I can jump in as well. Just also thinking about and really encouraging from a really sort of gentle perspective of, what helping that person see what are the risks, that you're concerned about in taking that step. How can we help you feel supported in that? How can we either break it down, as Shannon said, take one thing at a time, or create an environment for you where it's easier and more comfortable for you to do that? Maybe it's starting with a very foundation level course, not starting with a degree program, right? Or even just exploring a webinar topic if it's in this area of, the area that they need to upskill. But I would also flip it and ask the question, what's the risk of not pursuing that? What is that opportunity cost? How will your life be less enriched if you don't take it, step out and take a risk? What could the opportunities be if you do that? So encouraging them to think about sort of both perspectives.
Wow, I love that. I love it. Dora, anything before we move on?
No, that was perfect. I can't add anything to that. Thank you, Janelle, Shannon.
Yeah, I see why you two are each other's counterparts. You play off each other very well. I've been loving the tag teaming. Another question, and we actually touched on this a little bit earlier, so whoever wants to jump in. Now, for remote or geographically dispersed employees, are there tailored approaches or practices to facilitate their engagement and learning?
I think it, Lasheen, a mix of things. We really got to find out what works for those employees. And I think Janelle mentioned earlier, just kind of the time zone challenge that we feel, just a personal anecdote, during COVID, it was a really tough time for all of us. And I had to really look at what some of the team members needed and what I could personally give, because we all were just working an incredible amount of hours, and just kind of flipping some of the things we did. So for instance, if I used to do meetings in the morning with that particular person that was in another zone or another country, could we flip that? And could I work more when it was convenient for them, and then change it the next month, so that we're not particularly for our team in China, they're always joining meetings, at ungodly evening hours for them, right? And so really just trying to figure out what works more for them. Now, I think more structured, we as a company, we do instructor-led training in each of the key regions. So there's some level of that available locally. And then, as I mentioned, there's that really large network of content in this My Learning world. So that's just in time available, whenever you want it. But I think it's more about they need that. Janelle's great at coaching, right? They need to be kind of coached and shown the pathway so they don't get maybe overwhelmed with all that's available, or underwhelmed because they don't know where it's at. So you're there as a let's say a leader or a manager, or just as another advocate, in this network really of a lot of females to help guide, to be that guide. So that's one of the things we've tried to do.
Shannon?
Yeah, something that Dora did when I first onboarded in the middle of COVID with the team that was really helpful. And it's something that, as I saw your question pop up, I thought, oh, I want to go back to this, right? Which is having your team take the time to educate each other also. I did this training. Here's something else that you might be interested in knowing. Here are 3 bullets from this training. So you're able to go a little bit deeper more quickly across the team. Also, that puts this connection between people. And as we all know, trust is such a critical element to developing our teams together. So what better way to really be able to do that than to put somebody in that leadership mindset of your team's going to turn to you and you'll be able to work together a little bit more cohesively in this. And sometimes the manager doesn't need to be a part of those conversations, and other times they do. So I think it helps build in a lot of different ways to facilitate engagement and learning, but also make them feel connected, because the more that employees don't feel connected, the more likely they are to go to other companies, is what they're finding. So.
Good point.
Yeah, I do have one more to add to this. Actually, you just made me think of it, Shannon. So, Lasheen, one of the other things, and to address the question, one of the other things we looked at is how do we build our team virtually, right? Because particularly for many years, we can travel and all be together, and you had new members join the team. So we looked at a training we did one that was survival based. So we're all in a plane, it crashed in some remote area of Canada. Like, what do we have to work with? And so there are those kinds of courses out there that really kind of helped us come together as a team. And we saw strengths in some people that we didn't even know that's how they thought. And so it was different than your traditional training. You're going to learn about this topic. It's kind of that scenario-based training that I really think can help the dispersed employees, but all of us to build stronger teams.
Cool. It's almost like a virtual escape room in a way.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right.
Just a little more scarier because ours was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say that part, but yeah, definitely thought it. Cool stuff. Oh my gosh. So another question. So lifelong learning often requires significant time and financial investments. Now, how does Siemens address these accessibility and affordability challenges to ensure a broader reach of their learning programs?
Janelle?
You want to take that first? Then I'll pipe in.
No, I didn't click off, but go for it. Yeah, I'm the newest here, but I can tell you, we do look at different opportunities for training, and also then again going back to our content, thinking about how we can make it as accessible as possible. When we think about some of the content we're producing, we're doing so to make that available to a global audience, essentially for free. Or for very low cost. For our own employees, we look at how, again, with that huge platform of curated content, thinking about how we can point them there first, and then also look at opportunities for outside. But I'm going to let Dora and Shannon jump in.
Yeah, I think at a company our size, there's a little bit of everything. There's certainly a lot of free content available, so that cost should not be an issue. But as we mentioned earlier, being an advocate, and so there's been a previous member of our team that has moved on to other great things within Siemens, but really talking with her about some management training that she wanted, and trying to find something that could fit particularly within our budget. So she made, again, a proposal for herself, and we looked at how we could pull funds together to pay for that. And so there's always kind of the existing set training budget that might be in anybody's plan for the year, but there's always opportunities to find funding for other things. So hopefully you're in a company or can get to a space like that where you've got both freely accessible for general stuff, but some opportunities to pitch something more. In fact, I did that just for myself recently because I wanted some more additional executive coaching, and the company is going to help me out with that.
That's great. I'd like to jump in on one more thing since we're representing startups. And then I've also worked in a nonprofit that had no training budget and have a very close tie with NFPs. So with that being said, I think the other side is who is looking at improving their own credentials and being able to find people that can supplement that in some way as well. So for example, somebody that is has years of experience. Maybe they haven't had many public speaking engagements, but they're starting to build their own resume. By reaching out in your community, you're able to start finding those people. And mental health, for example, a lot of people that work in that world don't get training dollars out of their companies. I don't know if you know that, but that's something that is really critical for us all to take a look at. So what are other opportunities that we can do to help them raise themselves up to be able to get their own training in some regard, right? As you're starting to really create these building blocks for yourself and your network, but also for helping others in the community. And I think that's where social media really can help play in. So that's not a Siemens response, but that's a little bit of an additional insight on the NFP side.
Fantastic. Thank you. We still have a little bit of time. I'm going to keep it on going. And audience members, please, just if you have it on your mind, now's the time. But while we're going, let's see. With the rapid advancements in technology and automation, how does Siemens ensure that the skills acquired through their programs remain relevant and adaptable in the face of future changes? Tora?
I'm just going to jump in there. Yeah, it's really about future-proofing those skills. We talk about that a lot with our software development as a company, right? How do we future-proof that? It's really about us. We've got to stay on the pulse of what's needed and constantly be in that feedback loop. I mentioned the one organization that Shannon and I have been involved with called American Society for Engineering Education. And we did a skills gap study. While there's a lot of skills gap studies out there, we wanted to really look at fresh hires and what did they feel they were most or least prepared for. And so that was kind of taking, others that might be older in the industry out of the equation and really let these young, people who have been graduated with probably about an average of about 8 years, what is their feedback to us? So that's something that we just have to constantly do because with all these technological advances, things are constantly changing and getting faster. So those are the things we have to do. We have to stay connected, both the voice of the graduate and the new hires and the workers, and then continue to evolve what we're taking to the market. So that's one comment. I don't know, Shannon and Janelle, if you want to add to that.
Sure, I can just jump in, just going straight on from that. One of the things that my team is actually pursuing right now is some market research with some of our key customers on what are their greatest employer needs as employers right now. What is that skills gap? Where are those top areas? And how can we help be a sort of a connector or hub between those businesses, those organizations, and our learning institution partners, and think about how we can all come together to really enable the learners to get those skills so that everybody can be successful. They can go into great jobs and be really successful and do well, and that the employers are able to get what they need to. And that then informs the way that we engage and informs the kind of content that we will be able to produce.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move on? All righty. Cool stuff. All right. So, at Fairygodboss, we have a tradition where we like to ask our panelists the following. Now, what they've observed and told me, and at first I didn't really agree, but then I realized they may have a point. They observed that women do not feel comfortable enough bragging or taking ownership of all the amazing things they achieved. And I remember the first time I was told that, and I said, well, I don't feel that comfortable bragging about my achievements either. And then they said, look behind you, Lasheen. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, all of them. So I shut up after that. So with that said, I would love for each of you to share an accomplishment, whether it be personal or professional, that you're most proud of. And Janelle, I'd love it if you could kick us off.
Sure. So for me, it was quite a while back, but it was at a point when it was really a pivotal point, both for me personally and for my career. I just knew I wanted to make a major change, and I had a window of opportunity. I also had a passion for other cultures and knew that I really would love to live in a different country at some point, more than just, going and traveling and visiting. So after a lot of thought and a lot of planning, both logistically and sort of thinking about my future, I did it. I finished my role. I signed up to do more learning, to do a credential. I did a teaching English as a foreign language certificate. Let go of my apartment, sold my furniture, and I moved overseas to Prague in the Czech Republic, which started a journey of 12 years. 2 years in Prague and then 10 in the UK. But it was actually that experience that actually where I ended up moving into higher education and really defined my career journey for my next 20 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Wow. Shannon, I'd love to hear one of your accomplishments, personal or professional.
Sure. So I think one of the largest areas for me has been my personal journey. I grew up in a not so financially well-to-do situation, but had an incredible family. So when I talk about mentoring, that's one reason why I'm really passionate about that. And being through that particular journey has been tremendous. And I remember coming home in the middle of college, my first year, and one of my family members said, congratulations, you made it through your first semester. That's incredible. And another one said, congratulations, you'll never find a job with a GPA below a 3.0. So I had a whole journey that I had to go through to get my GPA up, right, to be able to be successful in their eyes. At that same point, someone said to me, what are you going to do with a degree in communication? There aren't any jobs for that. And I said, I don't know, but I'll figure it out, right? And so I can go on for a little while, so I'm going to keep it brief. But I'll just say that seeing other people's journeys really impacted mine, and being able to take the opportunities when they came to be able to move forward. And that timeline to change element also, where when I first met Dora, we were talking and I said, I think I've got 6 more months in my current position. I'm either going to do A or I'm going to do B. So let's see where this goes. Professionally is what I was looking at there. And so being able to set up your own milestones, to me, is something that was a really hard challenge, because I had people defining them for me for so much of my life, and then being able to take ownership of it. So that journey and setting up my own timeline has been really critical, to then be able to do this role, which takes a bunch of different bits and pieces of working in a non-for-profit, teaching ESL, and putting it together in a global role has just been really exciting to really be able to impact students. So that's my long-winded answer on that one, Lasheen. I could talk forever and love to listen to other people more.
That was an amazing answer, and very inspiring to our audience, I'm sure. Last but certainly not least, Dora, we would love for you to take us home with this one. What achievement or accomplishment would you love to brag about?
So I think I want to acknowledge first with that question, Lasheen, is imposter syndrome, because I don't think until the last really decade of my career, I heard many women talk about that, because I think we struggle to say we went through that, right? And I go through it every day. I went through it today before I had an executive meeting. And part of it is I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, and so to suddenly see that I'm in a high-tech industry, I've always felt like I didn't quite fit. Mm-hmm. And the reality, and exactly what I told myself mentally this morning in preparing, is I am who I am. I got here. I deserve to be here. So I guess that's just advice I'm giving. In addition to, what I want to brag most about are these 2 amazing women that are here on this call with me. Like, to have them come into my team and be a part of our mission for Siemens, that means more to me than anything else we might be doing, because that's my role at this stage of my career, is developing these future leaders. So one thing I will end on, because I don't know if we'll have time to go through any more, Lasheen, but two things. One is, I love Emily Dickinson, and she has this poem called Dwell in Possibility. And I feel like that's been a mantra for my whole career. I never would have thought this would be possible for me, right? So I would just encourage you all to dwell in possibility. And the last thing is one that I try to share when I do talk with women's groups, is looking at some frameworks. And one that's really served me well is the Japanese concept of ikigai, because I feel like I'm now at a point where I'm doing my mission, but I had to go through the process of really figuring out, what am I good at? What can I get paid for? What can have some impact? And so if you haven't heard of that, that is just a really good framework for you to find the spaces for the things you're going to brag about throughout your career. So just wanted to share that.
I love that. So we are pretty much at the wire here. We're going to do a very super fast lightning round. So in as few words as possible, ladies, what advice would you give your younger self? Shannon, knock it out.
Get out of your own head and look around you.
Boom. Janelle.
Plan, be strategic, but take the risk.
Take the risk. Bet on yourself. I love it. Dora, take us home.
Shoot higher and brag more.
Woo! Love it. Love it. So thank you so much, Dora, Shannon, and Janelle, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing such fantastic and tangible advice. Thanks to everyone who tuned in for the discussion. As a reminder, we will be sending the recording out of today's event, along with more resources about more opportunities at Siemens Digital Industry Software. In the meantime, be sure to check out the Siemens software profile on Fairygodboss. We'd love to hear feedback from our audience in ways that we can improve the event for the future. Please head to the type form on the right and share your thoughts in a 1-minute survey. Say some nice things about the guy in the suit. Thanks, everyone. We will see you all next time. Have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.